As a PC rental service, Shadow will let you play almost anything. Does Shadow have what it takes to bring Leon and Ashley home before they suffer a gruesome demise? Let's find out how well Shadow plays Capcom's latest blockbuster remake. The first time you set up the game is going to require around 20 to 30 minutes. Resident Evil 4 is about 60 gigs. Once the game's installed on your Shadow machine, you'll be in the game within a few minutes of starting your PC. Shadow's top-notch app is simple to use and seamlessly streams your input to the game quickly and without lag. Limited only by your latency to the cloud server location, expect responsive controls as long as your own connection can keep up. I had no issues parrying, dodging, or otherwise moving. The game does what I want, when I want. Resident Evil 4 offers convenient estimates for your graphics settings, though you'll find out that the in-game performance doesn't quite match up with what's provided. Let's jump right into the power tier. Leaving the recommended settings on, the game runs pretty well. There's no FSR, no RTX, but you'll find that we're skirting the 50 to 60 FPS range throughout our play, with some very occasional dips into the high 40s. These recommended settings are good. Without FSR, you get that crisp native resolution without upscaling. Though RTX isn't on, the game's own system for shadows and lighting is done very well and is tailored to fit the ominous aesthetic of the franchise. Honestly, I also recommend the recommended settings. It's not perfect, but it's very good. What happens if we jack everything up to maximum in 4K? All the visual effects are here, but we can't maintain that 60 FPS standard. We're getting around 35 to 50 frames per second even when there's tons of action and effects on screen, and it's still quite playable. If you want to see what Resident Evil 4 looks like at its very best, and you don't mind a bit of a frame rate drop, power is going to get you through. And if you're a power upgrade user with a 1080 resolution, you can do whatever you want. It runs great. It hugs 60 frames, and even at the most demanding, it'll never really drop below 50 frames. Seriously, go nuts in 1080. Power tier can handle it. Dropping down to the base tier on recommended settings and staying in 4K gives us an awful 20 to 28 FPS. This is before we get to the village fight. It's pretty rough. If you can't put more frames per second out than the GameCube original, we're going to have to make some adjustments. I don't really like to play games that should look amazing at less than 30 frames per second unless we absolutely have to. Let's move on. Even with the lowest settings, base has issues running that 4K natively. This doesn't mean you can't play on 4K with base. If you change your settings to prioritize performance, which means utilizing FSR upscaling, the game can and will run at 35 to 50 frames per second, even during the hectic village fight. Such massive upscaling does have an effect on the clarity of the game. The visual quality difference between FSR and native is striking. Dropping down to 1080, where most folks on the base tier are going to be playing, the recommended settings will keep you around 30 to 50 frames per second, with noticeable dips when visual effects occur, such as when you get hit by an enemy's attack. It's playable, though we're not getting near that 60 FPS sweet spot. Dropping down to balance doesn't help too much, with our lower end FPS going to 35 and still not getting past 50. If we drop the settings down to prioritize performance, we're not going to get a whole lot more out of this frame rate. The game bottoms out at 40 instead of 30 when the settings are all the way down, and that's good, but we're still not getting very far past 50 at any given time. It's playable, it's fun, but I regret playing on the power tier first because now I know what I'm missing.
Not that I had a choice.
Resident Evil 4 runs passably on the base tier. FSR has no discernible performance increase on the lower resolutions, so you may as well skip it if you're already on 1080. You can even play in 4K on the base tier if you jack up the FSR all the way to performance, though I prefer to simply play in the lower resolution. The game really shines in the power tier. RTX is a nice to have, but the built-in lighting system of Resident Evil 4 is quite good, so it's not super important to your experience. The frames hold high. If you play in 1080p, you can basically maximize your settings and enjoy the game with minimal performance drops. If you play in 4K, a more balanced approach is needed to maintain that high frames per second. I recommend getting the power upgrade if you're going to be playing Resident Evil 4 on Shadow. That upgrade is going to absolutely be worth it if you want to get the most out of this potentially gorgeous game. That being said, you can get by with base if you only care about the gameplay and you don't need that top-of-the-line visual quality. It's wild to think that the power tier runs the game at 4K and maximized settings with roughly the same frame rate that the base tier can run the game with everything turned all the way down. If you're new to Shadow, please use the link in the description to sign up. It really helps support the channel. If you like this overview of Resident Evil 4 on Shadow, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to support the channel, grab a channel membership or join our Patreon. And above all else, be sure to subscribe and bell up to keep it locked right here at the only place you can do battle in gaming heaven, Cloud Gaming Battle. I'm Little Quick, and apparently I'm allergic to chainsaws.